Interesting that there could be some financial issues on the horizon for one.
Angel Reese thought she had it all figured out. A rising basketball star with a shiny new podcast. She was living the dream, but what if I told you her financial world was about to come crashing down? You might be thinking, no way, she's got Shaq backing her up. But here's where it gets really interesting. Even big names can't save you from a financial disaster. Stick around because we're about to dive into why Angel's podcast dream might turn into a money nightmare.
$100,000 if you make this shot. Let's see.
Let's take a look at how Angel went from basketball standout to podcast host. She has the talent, the fans, and the star power. Everything you'd think would make her podcast a hit. But as we know, even the best plans don't always go as expected. You might be thinking, so what's the problem? She's got a podcast. What's the worst that could happen? Well, hold on tight, because this is where things take a turn. We're talking about Better Collective, the media giant behind Angel's show, and how it's all about to get complicated.
Shaquille O'Neal's The Big Podcast and Angel Reese's Unapologetically Angel podcast have captivated fans with their mix of sports insights, cultural commentary, and fun personal stories. Both shows are part of Playmaker HQ, which operates under Better Collective, a media giant valued at $820 million.
Did you catch that? This team is worth an eye-popping $820 million. That's like 820 million basketballs stacked up.
Yet, recent financial hurdles at Better Collective could bring unexpected challenges to these beloved podcast. Again, I don't know how beloved Angel Reese's podcast is, but Shaq's got a pretty good following.
But even with all that money, they're still dropping the ball.
In late October, Better Collective announced over 100 layoffs, citing challenges in the U.S. and slower growth.
Can you believe they just announced over 100 layoffs? That's not just a few backups. It's like an entire team being let go. It's rough, like watching your favorite players get traded, but even worse. And this story isn't over yet. Here's where it really gets wild.
This announcement led to a staggering 36.5% drop in the company's stock. Wow. And downgraded revenue outlook for 2024 from a possible $460 million down to as low as $385 million. So they came in about $75 million short of what they had forecasted. That's not great.
You heard that right. Better Collective stock dropped a massive 36.5% in just one day. It's like losing the championship in the final seconds. Not just a trophy, but millions of dollars gone. Imagine working all season to make it to the finals, only to watch everything fall apart at the last moment. That's the kind of financial mess we're talking about. But what does this mean for Angel? Well, her podcast could be in serious trouble because of Better Collective's money meltdown. If the company behind her show is struggling, they might not have the funds to keep it going. It's like trying to play basketball with a deflated ball. It just won't work.
In trouble, it's the one that owns that company that is in major trouble. And yeah, for Shaq, that thing could completely disintegrate. The Death Star could shoot Shaquille O'Neal's podcast and it wouldn't make a dent in the kind of money he makes. Angel Reese, on the other hand, there's no way that wouldn't be felt, I'm sure.
So that means Angel is basically depending on this podcast for income. Now you might be thinking, what does this mean for her bank account? After all, she's living the high life, right?
I just hope y'all know the WNBA don't pay my bills at all. I don't even think that pays one of my bills. Literally. I'm trying to think of like my rent for where I stay at. I'm gonna do the math real quick.
It might cover that. Yeah, it covers that. It definitely covers that.
What is my... I don't even know my salary.
When the company backing you starts to struggle, your paycheck can shrink fast. Kind of like a lead slipping away in the fourth quarter. So, what's next for Angel? Will her podcast survive this financial mess, or will she need to find a new way to make money? We're about to find out, because in sports and entertainment, things can change in a flash. Right now, it looks like Angel Reese might need to come up with a whole new game plan if she wants to keep her podcast dream alive.
Oh, here comes the bad news for Angel Reese.
Angel Reese isn't the first superstar to dive into the podcast world. But here's the thing. Even the biggest names can stumble when they grab the mic. Let's take a closer look at a trend that's got everyone, from former presidents to royalty, wondering what went wrong.
I didn't see that coming. Now, look, a lot of people think just because somebody has like this famous name that their podcasts do real well. And, well, that's not true.
Can you believe it? A podcast hosted by a former president and first lady was supposed to be massive, but it tanked on Spotify. It's like planning the biggest event ever and nobody showing up. And Meghan Markle, her podcast didn't do much better. Listeners dropped off quickly, almost as if she was talking to an empty room. How does that even happen when you're royalty?
Because the Obamas, their podcast completely bombed. All right? It came out, Spotify gave them a deal, and it fell flat on its ass.
Here's the twist. It all comes down to the content. Fame alone doesn't cut it. These celebrity podcasts are falling short because they're not offering what listeners truly want. It's like thinking you can win a game just by showing up. Doesn't work that way. So, what's this mean for Angel Reese? She's realizing that just because you're famous doesn't mean your podcast will succeed. You need to bring something special to the table, something that keeps people coming back. Just like perfecting a game-winning move, podcasting takes skill, effort, and a lot of practice.
As did the whole Prince Harry, Meghan Markle podcast venture. It was trash. Nobody listened to it. And look, regardless of the name, if nobody is tuning in to listen to the actual podcast, and more importantly, listen to it all the way through.
Want to know the secret to a successful podcast? It's all about authentic storytelling and engaging content. You got to connect with your audience, make them feel like they're right there with you, and give them an inside look they can't get anywhere else. Share behind-the-scenes stories from the court, break down game strategies, or dive into the mental side of being a pro athlete. That's what keeps people coming back for more.
If you got an hour and a half long show, the most valuable real estate is right around the 45-minute mark. Okay, 30 to 45-minute mark. If it's 2 hours, around an hour. So audience retention is very important there as well in order to get the best ad rate.
So, what's the outlook for Angel? Her podcast could be in serious trouble, and that might impact her finances. If the show doesn't take off, she could miss out on a big source of income. It's like blowing an easy shot and losing out on a major endorsement deal.
Is it the clips that show up on X that are actually getting the views and not the actual podcast, not on YouTube, but wherever the podcast actually is housed or headquartered? In other words, the actual audio of the podcast. How is that thing doing? Because that's the important part, okay?
Is Angel ready for the financial hit if her podcast falls flat? Or can she turn things around and make it big in the podcast world? One thing's for sure, she's got a tough road ahead. In this game, a big name alone won't cut it. She needs to bring the same energy and passion she has on the court to her podcast if she wants to score a win. Now, let's talk about Angel's money situation. And trust me, it's a real eye-opener. You might think WNBA players are living the high life, but here's the truth. Angel's rent costs more than her entire salary. Yep, you heard that right. Her WNBA salary is $7,734, but her rent, a staggering $100,000 a year. That's more than she makes in an entire season. No wonder she's probably feeling the pressure. Let's break down these numbers and see why Angel's probably sweating right now.
That's interesting. I found that interesting that there could be some financial issues on the horizon for one Angel Reese.
Angel isn't hiding from the truth either. She openly admitted, "I'm living beyond my means." Talk about being honest, right? But it does make you wonder, why is she living so big if she can't afford it? That's where the podcast comes in. It wasn't just a side project. It was supposed to be her ticket to the big leagues. We're talking about serious money, the kind that would make her $96,000 rent seem like pocket change. The podcast was her chance to keep living the high life without constantly stressing about the price tag.
What is I don't even know my salary. 74? Okay. Times.
Here, I'll do it.
Yeah. I don't even know my salary. Does it? The only Yo! I'm living beyond my means. It's like No, my rent is more than that. It's $8,000.
But here's where it gets really tricky. If the podcast money dries up, Angel's lifestyle could come crashing down fast without that extra income. How's she going to keep up with that sky-high rent? It's a serious financial bind. You might be thinking, can't she just move somewhere cheaper? Sure, but remember, she's a young star with endorsements, appearances, and a whole lot of attention. Living in a fancy place might be part of her image, but if the podcast doesn't work out, she could face a tough choice between keeping up appearances and staying financially stable.
Given her WNBA salary of $73,439, above the minimum and far below the league's maximum of $241,984. Reese has candidly shared that her $8,000 monthly rent alone stretches her budget thin.
And remember, this is just the beginning of her career. Most rookies are scrimping and staving, not splurging. Angel's taking a huge risk here, betting everything on a podcast that might not bring in the cash she's hoping for. It's a big gamble, and if it doesn't pay off, she could be in serious financial trouble early on.
For Reese, losing her podcast could be a substantial impact on her income and lifestyle. Wow.
So, what's next for Angel? Can she make her podcast a cash cow she's hoping for, or will she need to adjust her lifestyle and live more like a typical rookie? One thing's certain, her financial future is hanging in the balance, and it all comes down to how her podcast performs.
How many cereal boxes can you hawk out there to pay that $8,000 a month rent?
Now, let's dive into just how much trouble her podcast might really be in. If you think the rent situation is rough, wait until you hear the podcast numbers. It's a whole different ballgame, and Angel might not be ready for what's ahead. $882,000 and $800 a month from a podcast sounds pretty sweet, right? But hold up. Let's clear up some myths about podcast profits. The real story behind Angel's podcast earnings might shock you.
For Angel Reese, who makes what, $77,000 from the WNBA? This could be rather interesting, especially in light of $96,000 a year in rent. I still don't get it, but okay.
Ever wonder how many people are actually tuning in to Angel's podcast? With all the buzz around her, you'd assume it's a hit, right? But here's the catch. Podcast numbers can be a lot more complicated than they seem.
Unapologetically, Angel brings in an estimated $5,200 to $82,800 monthly. Where did you get those figures from? Because I would love to see that. Filing a critical income gap, given her WNBA salary of $73,439, above the minimum and far below the league's maximum of $241,984.
Let's break this down. Some reports suggest Angel could be earning anywhere from $5,200 to $82,800 a month. That's a big gap, but here's the real twist. Those numbers might be way off. You might be thinking, but her YouTube views are massive. Here's the thing. YouTube views don't always equal podcast listens. They're like two different worlds. It's like trying to play basketball in two totally different arenas. What works in one doesn't necessarily work in the other.
There's no way that wouldn't be felt, I'm sure. Now again, maybe nobody listened.
And here's the kicker. Advertisers aren't just looking at how many people are downloading the podcast. They want to know if listeners are sticking around for the whole show. It's like checking if fans are staying till the final buzzer or leaving early. The real focus is on listener retention, especially in the middle of the podcast. That's where the big money is. You might be wondering, what's so special about the middle of the podcast? Well, that's prime real estate for ads. We're talking the most valuable ad space, usually between the 30 to 45-minute mark. If listeners are dropping off before then, Angel's podcast could be in serious trouble.
Most important part is the ad revenue towards the middle of podcast.
But here's the real shocker. Even with Angel's fame, her podcast might not be doing as well as you'd expect. It's not enough to just be well known. The key is keeping people hooked, and that's where many celebrity podcasts fall short.